the ones that you think your child is getting that from you already. You think that there's something about your parenting practice or your family life where that's clearly something that's on the radar, that you're focused on, that your child would know it. And circle the ones that you feel good about. They're in the toolbox. They're happening. Add up the ones that you circled. And then add up the ones that you didn't circle. Okay, what do you, is there a rate, do you have some of each? Do you have as many uncircled as circled? Isn't that interesting? Because those are things that matter, right, to you? Do any of you have all of them circled that you marked? Because if that's the case, you're very, very in tune with what's happening in your life and your kids' lives in that way. Okay, so now what we do is we take the ones that you circled, or wait, what is it? The circled ones are the ones that you're doing. You take the ones that are not circled, and you've got a chart that is B1. It looks like this. And you just go down this first column on the left, and you fill in the words that you did not circle, that you've marked, that you've highlighted. Things that you think matter to you in terms of the values that your life is expressing, or that you wish it were. You put those in that column. Does that make sense? You know what I'm asking you to do? Mm-hmm. You've circled 42?
Yeah.
That's good.
No, but doesn't mean I'm overreaching, trying to do too much.
It means these things matter. There's nothing here bad, right?
No, but maybe...
It means that you're living authentically, probably, is what it means.
Well, at least I'm trying.
That's right.
But I only the 9.
So do the 9.
Or maybe I'm being too hard on myself, impossibly. I'm doing more than
I wouldn't overthink it.
No.
Because it's the exercise itself that becomes kind of in your head that you
just
use
being
then.
aware of
yeah.
it. Okay.
Yeah. And then once you've got that list in the left column, you don't have to fill in the next 2 columns completely, but what I would like you to do is to go back to number 1. You've got the quality or the value. And then if you don't feel like that your child is aware of this, that you're not doing things that is making that part of your child's life, then put down something that would be a suggestion to yourself about how you could change that. So, for instance, if responsibility is 1, responsibility for their own things, then lunch, not bringing lunch that they forget in the car, could be a path for teaching them. There could be a million other paths too. Just something to jog your mind later if you look at this with what would be just a simple, everyday thing that happens that you're not mindful of that could be helpful in this way. You can keep working, but I'll say a couple things while you're doing that. What surprised me about being a grandparent is that there are different things I think about. And clearly it's because I'm in such a different role. I wasn't on the front line. I'm not on the front lines with these kids. These kids, I'm the dressing or the frosting or something, but I'm not the one, right at the heart of things. So that means that I can offer something different. That's where we come back to that networking. What's so important about that is people can add different things than what you do to a person's life. Mm-hmm.
So as we go on throughout the day, I'm wondering if you will address some of things like busyness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at my list, and service is one of mine, and the school offers a lot of opportunities. But with a husband who has a crazy job that sometimes feels like a single parent, we have a tournament out of town or something. So how do you... It's just hard with multiple kids to try to be in all the places and then do the things. This is the kind of stuff that drops off the plate, I guess is what I'm saying. I feel like...
Oh, yeah, you can just chase your tail all day and it still doesn't happen.
Yeah.
There's none of us are leaving stuff out on purpose. The days are full, right?
Yeah. But I do believe we make time for what's most important.
Well, but it's not all on us. Just that whole point of the schools, they're doing service. Maybe if we're talking about at supper what they did when they went to the children's home, and then they're seeing that I'm going off when they're at school and doing this, and Dad's doing that. But maybe the awareness of it doesn't have to be hand in hand with you, as much as we care enough about service that you go to a school where they're doing that, where they are focused on that. You go to church, or Dad and I have these organizations where we care about it. We care about it and we do it. And then we even reflect on it when we're in the car driving, or, it doesn't have to add another activity to the list as much as it's clearly a value that's incorporated in the entire life, not in the... or you can unearth one. That one could be an example for some people where there's absolutely nothing that has ever happened, and you think, okay. But how can they know how important it is to serve others if they don't serve anyone here at home and if they don't have any kind of service in their lives? So this summer, we're going to do Meals on Wheels on Wednesday. Or so next Thanksgiving, we're going to cook dinner and take it for whomever. Or, we're going to find ways to create some kind of meaningful experience that becomes important to us.
That's good, because you're just sort of addressing intentionality too, which I feel like...
Yeah. That's really the thing with begin with the end in mind, right? Intentionality is it. Yeah. It's not missing it if it's important. There's a lot of wonderful words on here that aren't important to all of us, that we each have our own way of looking at that, and our children will too. That doesn't mean that just because we pick out 20 of these things we don't want to miss, that they won't have 20 others of their own by the time they become adults or become your age. It just means that it was important to us not to miss it. It was what we had to offer. And it might have slipped by if we hadn't thought what was going on. And we'll talk, remind me to come back to busyness again in other contexts if I don't. Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping today to get ideas on, I have some friends who are very good about, having creative ideas of involving their children, in terms of charity and volunteer and that type of thing, and getting their friends to be involved in that and kind of like make a little community out of it. And I would love to, I'm not very creative about that. I would hope to be able to get more ideas about that. And like you said, begin with the end in mind and have a million ideas, but if you don't kind of sort and bring them up to the forefront, it won't happen.
So when we get through a couple more things and we get to this begin with the end in mind activity, there are several topics that we will talk about, specific things that we can do, or specific things that we, when I say we, I mean all of us, think of. But one of those is called responsibilities at home, in the neighborhood, at school, and in the community. So we will definitely talk about specific ways to work on that.
That book is really geared more towards adults, and the words are really big, so children understand it. But they have written a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, and that book talks about having your teenager write a personal mission statement. If you have a family mission statement that you sat down and wrote as a family, that each kid kind of needs to sit down and figure out what their end in mind is. And for kids, it tends to be shorter term, like you're not thinking 4 years down the road, but it does help you sort of get focused. But they do it, right? Yeah, well, they roll their eyes at you.
They don't do it without encouragement, yeah.
If you give them the book, it's written, and then they understand it. It was written by his son, Sean.
And do we still have that?
We have some around everybody at the belief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are books. Right.
Quick comment, I just wanted to during that. So I wonder if you could comment on if you've seen anything between first child versus baby. I mean, my oldest son he can live on his own now. Like, I feel like I've done a lot for job with him. My youngest son is my baby. I am looking at this list and I'm going, oh my gosh, I am so far behind the curve on him. Because Big Brother has gotten really independent, doing everything for little brother. So anyway, I just wondered if that is a thing.
Oh, yeah. You bet. Of all the things in child development, child order or birth order in the family is the thing that is the most consistent throughout all cultures, all times. In fact, I almost went over to the library in the middle school before I came here to get the book to read to you, but then I thought there's too much else. But do you know this book called Tiki Tiki Toomba No Sa Roomba? Hysterical little book. But the first son is Tiki Tiki Toomba No Sa Roomba, Tiki whatever. It goes on and on. And the second son is Sam. I mean, I don't know what it is, but it's not that. So all these things happen to Tiki Tiki that they're just, oh my God, and then nothing ever happens with Sam. So yes, that's definitely a possibility. There's nothing like the attention that the first child and the first grandchild get, right? Nothing. Nothing will ever be like it. The only thing that balances out over time, though, is kind of the hysteria. There's all this wonderful attention and love and, oh my, this wonder of this thing. But there's also all the worry and the ineptness and the I didn't think about that, and the worship. Because when someone becomes the hero child, that it looks pretty good at certain points in life. It looks like they have a pretty great spot. But it doesn't always feel that way to them then when the responsibility of all that is there. So anyway, birth order is a big deal, and when we realize what happens in birth order, then we pay when we think, we pay attention. That's what this whole exercise is. When we think about it, then we realize, okay, wait, I got to think about this some more.
School childhood, that's one of my kids, and it's like I'm doing it now. I can just see how it's all playing out.
But you're seeing it. Yeah, you're seeing it. I think, though, one of those other books that I've thought about that I'll never write, but I sure think it would make a good one, is what happens to a boy who has 4 older sisters? Or even 3 older sisters. I mean, you can take one mother, maybe 2, but you get 3 or 4 mothers, you'll never do anything the rest of your life. I mean, that's just that. Okay, so with this activity, you might find it interesting to sit down with the spouse and just spend an hour doing this. Or if you're a grandma, you might find it interesting to share it with your kids to think about for their children. And then put it away. Or you might not. You might just do it yourself and then just set it to the side. But it is in your head then. And not just for the words that you've picked out. It's in your head when something comes up where you're about to do something for a child that you don't really think, somewhere inside it's saying, don't do that. Yeah, when my oldest son first started to play baseball, we were at a baseball diamond, and of course it was, 110 degrees and dirty, and anyway, he'd been playing, he was hot, he looked like he could just keel over. I'm thinking they're going to lock us up for being bad parents. So I went over to him, and I grabbed the bat bag, and I started for the car. And my husband was way over here. And he saw me from a distance, and he came running, shouting at me. I thought, what's wrong? What happened? He said, put that down. I said, what? He said, put that down. So is there a snake in it? What's wrong? But he said, he carries that. If he's going to play baseball, he carries his own bag. My 3-year-old grandson comes to school with a backpack, and his dad was in the Army. And he has a phrase he uses, and I don't know what it is, but it's perfect. And because he wants Lincoln to put his own backpack on and go out to the car with it. And it's something like, if you pack it, you something. It's not carry, but there's a word that goes with pack. If you pack it, you do something with it. And here's Lincoln putting on his backpack, and that's what should happen, right? But that bat bag was heavy. And my darling son had been playing hard and was sweaty. But those are the moments when, if I had thought about it, I would have thought, who wants to play? I didn't play baseball. I don't need to carry it. But that's actually the advantage of having 2 parents, by the way. And 35% of the kids are growing up without 2 parents in the same house. But the advantage is that when one kind of starts to get it a little wrong or to be on autopilot, the other one can see something with different eyes and say, whoa, just a minute. And mothers, dads don't look at things the way that mothers do, and that's a good thing. And the last thing that we want to do as the kids grow up is get in between the dad and the kid and think that we somehow are the ones who should be making all the decisions. Because A, it's not true, and B, it helps us not be in danger of raising these young princes for whom there's no castle to go. I mean, I'm going to tell you today, the women that they're going to meet are not going to take care of them like mothers would if given the chance. So they're going to have a lot of trouble making these lasting relationships if that happens. So that's just word for wise. Okay, now so this activity you can continue with if it's of interest to you. Were there any words or things that really stuck out to you as, oh my gosh, why am I not paying attention to that? Or was it all pretty self-evident? Self-reliance. So isn't that just the most important one? And why wouldn't we?
I think it started with me, with her, the toddler, doing up her different. Like, I'll just get it done exactly.
Oh, well, that's always what it is. I can do the dishes a lot better.
Yeah. You know, and I watch her, and there's a video I've just seen lately, and there's a mom, and she's sort of posting a picture, and she's watching her child go up to the zipper on her coat, and she's being so patient. She walks away, she gets a coffee, she comes back, but she's refusing to do it. And I said, I wish I'd done that, because I think that's something that it starts with that, and then it's just every little thing. And then here she is in middle school, and I have to actually walk out of the room.
Yeah, because it would make, here, let me.
Like, Mom,
I know how to do this, yes.
And it's funny, when I come back, she has it done without my help. You know, but that's one thing I could self-reliant on. That's something I need to really pay attention to.
And you know, you're 100% right. It leads perfectly into what we're going to talk about now. But also, we don't know what's coming next. We know what's been before, and we know where we are today. But honestly, anybody with a brain in their head knows something very different and very difficult may be coming. And if our kids aren't self-reliant, I mean, we can't exactly prepare them, but we can help them learn how to stand on their own 2 feet and adapt to it, right? So if you'll take out the sheet that is where is this? Just a minute. I have to get my grip. Rethink things. Look at what I'm doing. Do something. I want you to take out the chores list. And I don't know if I labeled it. It's a copy of, it's maybe C2. Okay. You can stand up. You can take a 5-minute break, but I mean 5 minutes, and then sit back down while I regroup and find my right notes, and you can talk to each other and look for C2 and C1. Okay, we're putting names on here, dear.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm so glad to see you. Yes.
My dad had polio.
I know.
Yeah, how are you doing? Have you had any post-polio?
No. I had some neurological kinds of things that they diagnosed as MS.
Right.
And I don't think it was. I think it was misdiagnosis. But at that time they wondered if it was, but it wasn't.
It wasn't.
But I had the original vaccine. So even though, right, he would have been right before that, I think. So even though I had polio, and lots of the children in the hospital with me died, but I don't think any of them became crippled. I think that the original vaccine was enough to protect us, from that.
No, I think most of the children in the town, like the parents woke up and
they were all
16 children had died in Prairie, Oklahoma, and he was.
When people don't get vaccines.
I know. I'm so pro-vaccine.
Oh my God! Do you know what could happen?
Coffins in Prairie, Oklahoma, in 1940.
Well, Linda Dawkins, you know Mrs. Dawkins.
Yes, I remember.
She had polio.
Had an iron lung, wasn't she?
Right. She had a big scar from the tube, and Dave Holly had polio too.
I didn't know that.
We all had it, I think, the same year in different parts of the country.
Isn't that, it came in waves. I remember that, yeah.
Well, my son Roman's been going through all these surgeries on his leg up at the Shriners Hospital in Portland, and he's been in a wheelchair for a year and all of this.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, he's doing okay though.
What was wrong?
A birth defect for lengthening his leg.
Okay. Oh, well, maybe we did talk about that. Yeah.
He's now walking with crutches, and so it's been
Yay.
years. So we're getting there. 2 surgeries down, 2 more to go. He's almost there.
Bless his heart.
But it's been wonderful having a father who's a quadriplegic, because when I'm like, well, you still have to throw your laundry, or you still have to do things, my dad can go, hey, listen, I had a disability before the Americans with Disabilities Act, before they were ramped.
That's right.
So I had to, you want to tell him getting to class and, getting in a shower in a dorm room,
It's those gifts that you get from the trouble that I think it's so hard for us to accept.
Yeah.
Them as gifts, to turn them into gifts. I guess that's what it is.
No, but I was like, isn't that funny? Well, go talk to Doc about it. See what he says. If it's unfair.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's been interesting. And the other thing was, I went away to Portland for surgery for 3 weeks with him, and things didn't go well. And so my full attention was, on him. And I came back and everything was fine. So that was a little bit of an ego. No words.
But that means what a great job you've been doing.
Well, no, but it's just, I'm also like, I don't need to be doing half the things
That's
I'm
right.
also doing. I'm like, they do their laundry, and the 10-year-old is perfectly capable of doing their laundry, and can do all that stuff. And it was, because my husband, is not a fearful parent or a helicopter.
No, I bet he's not, because he's very adventurous. And so he's got that to give.
So, but he was the sole parent. So that was...
And he did it.
Humbling.
He did it. He did it. They can do it.
Something to check. Now, if there is anything, I know we don't have much time, like when you have a different as a parent culture and the community, that will add maybe to the problem. I mean, is there any things extra that we need to know? Like the kids, their perception of the culture, lecturing them, they will think doesn't come totally different from other families.
Right.
They do. Because I have this problem.
Right.
He doesn't look
He
at it.
feels like you all are different than he'd like to fit in.
It's wrong. You don't know. You don't understand. You come from a different.
So part of that is his age. I mean, part of it is, even if you weren't from a different culture, he would feel like you were. My kids thought I was from Mars. I mean, they feel like they want to be like everybody else, and I'm trying to keep them from doing that. And then that's intensified in your situation. But it's temporary, because in him there are those pieces of your culture and what he is and what he's grown up with that are who he is. And as he gets older, he will begin to recognize and embrace that. It's part of the natural. You want him to embrace it for himself, not just because you told him to. So part of him getting there is pulling away from it, so that then when he matures, he comes back to it, and he's done it himself. Nobody imposed it on him. It's his decision to be who he is, even though actually he's already that. So there's not much you can say to make him be happy about that. But there is a way to keep him from feeling like you are upset that he is pulling away. Because you can acknowledge that that's part of his growing up process, but that the day will come when he will look at you and his growing up in the culture and think, thank God, this is me. It was all the way it should be. But I have to get away from it before I can come back and embrace it. That's the hardest thing. But it will happen. And it will happen because he has been so well loved and so well nurtured and so well taught that it's in there. It's just going crazy.
Thank you.
And it's so hard. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
I don't want to keep.
No, you're wonderful. So glad you're here. All right, are we ready to get going? Okay. We're going to move into a little section about action plans and defining our children and so forth. But before we do that, I'd like to do this. I want you to pair up with the person next to you, and I think we start from this end, so that hopefully, if we end up with 3 at the end, that's okay. But start from this, and every 2 people are going to talk. And then at the end, if we have to make it 3, fine. Okay? And here's what we're going to talk about for a minute. I want you to take 30 seconds each and introduce your child to the person who you're partners with. And so if you've got 2 or 3 children, you're going to introduce 2 or 3 children to each other. So we'll have 5 minutes total, but you can kind of divide the time up. So you're going to say to each other, you're going to say, I'm going to introduce you to my son, Lincoln. He is. And then I want you just to say the first things that come to mind, okay, to each other about your children. Does that make sense? Go. Okay. Bring that to a close. All right, I know we could talk all day about this one. I mean, I hope we could talk all day about this one. But I'm curious to know what about this, about what you had to say about your child, did anything you said about your child surprise you? Did what you say first about your child surprise you? Did you learn anything about your child by talking about them? Tell me about that.
I would say no, but it was hard to say some of the things out loud because I said positive and negative attributes, and it felt ugly. Like you were shaming him in public or something.
We're between friends here, yes. Yeah. Well, it's really hard to know your child and not know the negatives and the positives, right?
I learned something about myself because my first thought was I need to say positive things, but what started to come out were the things that I worry about.
Well, yeah, what's on our minds, right?
Like I mentioned she's a worrier, that she's anxious.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, but they weren't the first things.
Mm-hmm.
I did come up with 5th grade and blonde. She's crazy, she's smart, and then they came out. But I feel like that must be the way I think about
That's
that.
what's on your mind, yeah. Mm-hmm. I wonder if that ever goes away, actually. You know, I kept thinking that when they got out of the house, I could turn that part of my brain off, but shockingly, I haven't found that to be the case. No. And what happens later is you keep worrying, but you've got absolutely no control and no real business in it, except that you love them. But I mean, you're not. Anyway.
My first word was my child is exuberant.
Oh.
And when, as I said that, the back of my mind was like, gosh, she is. And I don't ever think of that. I don't take time to appreciate that, you know. And it's just like, I just go through the day picking at him for all the things that I want to see in him, but yet there's this exuberance that it's right there in front of my eyes every day. I fail to see it. You know?
It's a good thing you came to class today, Jackie. You really are leading me right to things I want to think about. So somewhere here I've written down a little poem that is deep in my heart, so it ought to be in my head, but I don't want to get it wrong. Ugh. Where did I put it? But I feel this, I talk about this with teachers a lot. I mean, our what we do when we go into a classroom is we have things we're supposed to teach. And it's our responsibility to. And in a school like this, if we don't do it, nobody is. Because we're not going to cover it next year. We've got it plotted out. Because we want them to be somewhere specific in all of these different areas when they walk out the door, right? So if I don't do what I'm supposed to do, so I'm thinking about that. I'm also thinking about how I do it. Because I want to do it in a way that they're going to remember and that they're going to enjoy and that they're going to get at least enthusiastic enough to buy in and do it and learn it. And then I'm thinking about, I've got to do this on the computer and I've got a whole bunch of things I'm thinking about. But what I like to remind teachers is, and teachers being myself too, is we got to enjoy this moment because this is their life. They aren't just learning here, they are living this childhood here. Right? And it's a precious thing. And so when they're doing it, it has to be good moments along the way, right? All day, all the time. You can't grow without pain. You can't grow without suffering. You can't grow without mom saying, let's polish this piece, right? But they should know, right, that we see that exuberance and we consider it a gift. Right, that we see that kindness and we are so touched by it. That we see who they are. I'm going to find the poem because I don't want to mess it up and it's up here somewhere, but I'll read it to you. But when we introduce our children to someone else, sometimes a word like that comes out and we think, that's true. But do they know it? Because when you're living it, do you claim the gifts that you have? Many of us will never be able to say out loud what we think our strongest 5 traits are. It won't seem like it seemed a little self-serving and not very humble, right? If we say, well, I'm pretty good at this, and everybody thinks I'm nice, and all those things. We don't claim our gifts, but when that happens, when we grow up without knowing that this is something that we see in you, and it ripples. It ripples out from you all day, everywhere you are. It affects everyone around you. It's the reason you're here, maybe, right? And it changes the world to have you here doing these things. So we shouldn't just introduce our children to other people. We should maybe be saying things to them so that they are aware that it's been noticed. They know we've noticed how messy they are. They know we've noticed what a potty mouth they have. They know that we've noticed those things, but do they know that we've not just noticed, but been changed by them because of these things we see in them? That poem about your child is not your own, he's himself, or, it's about that. It's about this amazing person who actually isn't us. There's a lot of us in there, and that may be a good thing or a bad thing, but this is some other human that has come to the world to do some other thing. So anyway, it's not like you sit them down tonight and say, okay, now these are the good things about you. I'm going to just tell you now, go get it off the table. We'll let you know what it is, and then we can get back to business as usual. But it's just an exercise to say, we've got to treasure these things that are uniquely them. Now, the things about them that worry us, that cause us to stay awake at night, because we have lived in this world a long time and we know how these particular quirks or problems or flaws or whatever they are could come back to ruin their lives or to cause them pain and suffering. There's just got to be, because we're the ones who are the parents, there's just got to be a balance. And we don't ever want the worry to get in the way of this balance that we're trying to keep. There are 2 things that shout more loudly at children than words. Children and especially adolescents. They are feelings and actions. There comes a point where your words mean 100% nothing. If you start talking and your child could finish the sentence because he's heard it before and before and before and before, when that happens, you start in and the eyes glaze over, you can be sure they are paying no attention, period. They may run it through their head in their own words, but they know what you're going to say. They've heard it before, they don't want to hear it again. But if you feel something, it doesn't matter what you say about that. They are going to start feeling it too. I don't know for sure why. This is biological as much as it is something else. You've seen those studies where they they've got some kind of a microscope and they're looking at two separate cells and they poke one and the other one jumps. There is something, we're connected. And with people we love and our children, we are connected way more deeply than we think about. So if I am sad, but I've got a happy face on, they start to get sad too. Now, will a teenage boy tell you they're sad for you? What's wrong? Maybe, or maybe they'll just get really mad at you or slam it. I mean, that doesn't. They're feeling you doesn't mean they'll understand what that means or what to do about it. It just means they are feeling you. So when we're anxious and when we worry and when we are distant for a reason, when our life is giving us trouble, when things are happening to us, they may not know what, but they're feeling it. And in fact, if they don't know what, but they're feeling it, and it's a big deal, they are turning it into something even worse. So, many of you have lower school children, but those of you who have middle school children and high school children, by that time, when the brain begins to explode and all these things that they begin to think about that they never have before, when they go to bed at night and don't sleep, which is most of the time, then they are imagining the worst. What if my mother dies? She seems like she doesn't feel good. What if my mother dies? No, she's not sick, but she could die. This thought may never have wouldn't have gone through the mind of a 4-year-old probably, unless the mother really was sick. But at some point, the feelings that we have are embedded in the children, and they don't know what to do with them except to take that on as anxiety and worry, right? So the solution to that, I don't know what the solution to that is. I think that's actually a good thing. But the solution to them thinking something even worse is going on is to share with them what's going on. When there's really trouble and it's affecting us, whether we know it or not, it's affecting them. So that's the other thing that speaks more loudly than words is our actions. We may say, don't yell at your brother, and then 5 minutes later we might be yelling at the brother. In fact, we probably will, because if he was, you will too. So there just reaches a point where it just doesn't matter what we do. If what we do and say aren't the same, it's what we're doing that they're looking at, right? This came from somewhere. It doesn't really apply, so I don't know why I said it, but there it was. Now, let's look at this chore sheet. No, don't look at it. We're going to look at it. But first, I forgot. I got to do this. So you will know this. If you've been in Psych 101 in college or anywhere else, you will know that there are different parenting styles, and there's been lots and lots of research about parenting styles that would all come to the same conclusion, and that is that there is a preferred parenting style. And by preferred, I mean children parented this way tend to grow strong emotionally and intellectually, socially, and physically. And that would be this one. So let's talk about the others. So above this line, these two parenting styles are more responsive to the children, and these two down here are less responsive to the children. And then this line indicates these are less demanding, and these are more demanding. So clearly the one that you don't want to be is over here, this quadrant. Less demanding and less responsive equals neglectful. These parents they're hands off. That's the good way to put it. But they can also be absent. Physically absent, emotionally distant, not engaged. So they're not guiding, right? And they're not even really loving in terms of the nurturance piece. And children raised in this kind of a home tend towards depression and anxiety because their needs aren't being filled. Pretty much none of them are being filled unless they're the most basic, right? So that's the one that we don't want that. Now these two on these quadrants they're not as dangerous for childhood, but there are things about them that aren't as empowering either. So this permissive indulgent parent is very responsive. So the children who are raised by these parents, they're feeling the love. They're connecting to their parents in this way. It may feel more like a friend kind of relationship, but even that is kind of, and eventually we all become friends. We don't want to make too much of that word, but it probably doesn't feel like somebody here is guiding the ship. There's not a captain in charge here, because parents in this group, they're meeting the children's needs of sort of the in the way of, I'm doing it for you. If you need something done, I'm happy to do it for you. I'm not going to require much of you in this situation, but I'm here for you to do it. They don't really have a discipline plan or that kind of thing because there really aren't rules. It's kind of go with the flow. And you can imagine, some of you parent this way too. I'm not saying this necessarily in a negative way, but it's a philosophy of life that says, that this flower is going to bloom as it blooms. I'm not going to worry that much about it. I want to see, in fact, sometimes there's a great interest in what does this childhood look like if I don't interfere with it? If I let them be who they are, if I just let it be. They might nag because when something needs to be done, but it hasn't been set out as a kind of a rules, consequences kind of situation. And they are easily give in because of this going with the flow idea. Well, yeah, I thought it wasn't a good idea to go to that concert, but now that you've thrown a fit and I see how much it matters to you, you probably would have fun. Okay, let's do it. You go ahead. I'll take you over. Okay, that's that one. This one, authoritarian. This is a well-run house. This comes from a value system that says that order is important. There's discipline or punishment if you don't follow the rules. We have high expectations. That's actually the best part about this. But we're not going to worry too much about why you're going to do it. You're just going to do it, right? It's because I said so kind of thing that we all would say at some point, but that this kind of parenting style would always say. And the values here are achievement, responsibilities, order. So this is high demands, but low responsiveness. What makes this one better than this one and better than this one is it's high nurture and high expectations. So you get the benefit of, there is an order to it, but the order is more in the way of discipline, meaning to learn. There will be consequences, but these are all based around the opportunity for you to learn what to do and why to do that and how to do that. We're going to support that. But we are along the way, we're going to enjoy your childhood. There's a real emotional warmth to this kind of thing. And so even though there are high expectations for behavior and achievement and those things, it's all wrapped in this kind of protective factor soup that says, I'm going to help you with these because we're all in this together. So authoritative ends up to be the parenting style that most surely leads to a kind of strength that in all these emotional, physical, social, intellectual. Knowing that, then let's talk about the chores. Okay? Authoritative parents would dole out chores differently than authoritarian parents would. And these parents probably wouldn't over here. Okay? So, if we're going to learn adult tasks, if we're going to learn to do the things adults do, somebody has to teach us. And that somebody should be the parents. It could be the drill sergeant or it could be the teacher if need be, but that's not the normal way for that to happen because there aren't beds to be made at school, right? There's not supper to cook in English class. So they may be learning responsibilities that lend themselves to school, but these are the ones we're interested in. The word self-efficacy is what teaching these adult-like responsibilities leads to. And that is this belief that I can affect change in the world. I can do the things I need to do. I can do it. can do it, I can do it, I can do it. No, I couldn't do it yesterday. And 100% I can't do it as well as Mom. But I can get that zipper up. I can do it, right? So, in a world where we don't have much left for the children to do as far as household chores when they get home from school or from football practice or whatever, this takes way more effort than it used to take. It used to be we needed everybody to do everything, and if you didn't, you were in trouble. And you could go play when you did it, or you could have dessert if you ate, or these things just happened. But in this world that we live in, they don't just happen. It's almost like we have to make up things for kids to do. And when we make up things for kids to do, how do we help them feel like it's important? How does it become that I am capable, and what would they do if I wasn't here? They need me. We all need each other in this family. So this comes from the book, How to Raise an Adult. It's a really interesting book. Looks like this if you're searching for it. And it's written by Julie Lithcott-Hames. And it's on a section where she's talking about these adult-like tasks. And she breaks down by age the kinds of chores that children at different ages could do. We're not going to go through those, although they're here for you if you're interested in looking at it. But I have two things to say about chores that kind of embellishes her list. I think her list is a good one. But if we're teaching chores, which become, by the way, adult-like activities, right? When you go to college and you're living in a dorm room with someone else, which may be the first time you've ever lived in a room with someone else, shared a bedroom with someone else. And in fact, you may go to college and not have to do that anymore because now everybody wants a single room, right? But if you do happen to have roommates, they may have some expectations about the level of cleanliness and so forth that you are willing to live in. They may want to have you make your bed. Teaching chores to me in the authoritative mode should follow the pattern that she lays out in the first part of your page there. No matter what age they are and what chore you teach, the first thing you do is you watch them do it. So if I'm teaching you how to make a bed, I'll make it, you watch. I'll make it, you watch. I'll make it, you watch. And then the next thing that happens is you and I will make the bed together. We'll do that for a while, right? And while we're making it, we'll laugh and talk and not focus on this chore you have to do, which is making the bed. Then we watch you do it, and when we watch you do it, we might give you helpful reminders about, oh, you forgot, oh, look. But again, you're doing it together, and you're not saying, you get up there and make that bed, right? You're doing that together. And then there comes this time when you can just do it. And once that time comes, you're supposed to do it. You just do it. You make your bed, you come to breakfast, right? You brush your teeth, you go to school. Whatever it is, you do it. And I may or may not comment on it. If you're doing it, I'm not going to mess it up and say, did you? If I notice you brush your teeth, I'm just going to assume you're supposed to brush your teeth. You're supposed to comb your hair. But occasionally I might be overheard saying to Dad or Grandma or somebody, Sammy is just growing up to be such a helpful kid. I never have to remind him to do this or that, or she always is willing to, maybe will make note of it, but I don't want to be nagging about it. Once it's established, I want to just keep it moving. It just goes, right? And then once those things happen and I get a little bigger, then the kid's going to have a new list of things that happen. The other thing I'd say besides the doing it together and doing it together with, in the context of we like being together, this is sort of fun. The next thing is that the next thing is not in my head right now, but the idea is that by the time we come back to that magic age of 10, when I was growing up, there wasn't a thing that could happen in a house that a kid couldn't do. We ironed, we did laundry, we cooked, we did yard work, we planted flowers and, picked the tomato. We did things because we did them with our parents. I know what the next thing is. The next thing is we don't have to be too critical about this process. We're not really looking for perfection. We are looking for competence and doing it. Competence and getting it and the automaticness of it. We're looking for them to have assumed the responsibility. Yes, we can zip jackets faster and we can make beds better and we can definitely clean a kitchen cleaner. But that's not, we don't want them to be 40-year-olds. We are helping them be 5-year-olds or 10-year-olds or 15-year-olds, but we are not, we're not making it a horrible thing. We just all do it.
I just walked in.
You may have seen the home.
I think it died.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's just fun to have everybody taking care of me. Thank you. Okay.
Just make sure you just take a few steps.
Okay. Can you see how this follows me?
Yes.
How cool is this? I mean, if you wanted to be on film, it would be pretty cool. So I'd like you to look at this list of chores and just think about self-efficacy and what you learn from doing chores at home. And then ask me if you have any questions about any of these or any things that aren't on the list.
Well, I just have a general question about trying not to nag about them. So my 11-year-old we're there, she's great. She doesn't do it as well as I do, but she does it. We don't talk about it. But my 8-year-old, he knows he's not supposed to come downstairs until his bed's made. I don't check, I don't ask. Then we go to school, I come home, I'm like, his bed's not made. And then, so that night, when he gets home from school, Torsten, you gotta go make your bed. I haven't had time to do it all day. Tomorrow morning, make your bed. He forgets again. So, at what, am I expecting too much of him at 8 to remember this? I don't think so.
No, you're not expecting too much, but you might have to go back to step 1 again.
And do it with him.
You do it again and again and again. So, to teach a routine. Sometimes in school, there are kids who haven't learned the routine on day 200. And so we don't, kill them. We teach it again, right? Okay, what do we do when we want to sharpen our pencil? How do we do it again? So Torsten could come home and you say, Torsten, let's go upstairs to your bedroom. It looks like you've forgotten how to make your bed. So you make it with him. Or, that's one approach, but another approach is kind of the love and logic or unconscious discipline approach where you can't have your iPad, you didn't make your bed this morning.
Right.
Now as we talk about punishment or discipline, so that feels a little bit like punishment, but the idea of it is discipline, which is to teach somebody, Torsten or somebody else, that there was a responsibility that you didn't do, which means that there's a fun thing that you can do when you do it. You can have your iPad when you make your bed. And no, I won't tell you where it is. You've seen that thing where the dad sends a email to a text or something to the kids that says, I want you to do the dishes, do the da-da-da-da-da-da, and when you get done, call me and I'll tell you where your charger is. So, I think it should be managed, but I think as many times as it takes to manage it is fine. What 8-year-old boy is not going to forget? What 12-year-old boy is not going to forget everything except just trying to get through life, right? It's amazing they remember to get dressed when they come down sometimes, but it's not, I guess this is the big piece, it doesn't represent a character flaw. It's not a conscious, I'm going to get you, I'm not doing what you said. It's, I just didn't do it, or I just forgot to do it. It was time to go. I wanted to eat. I couldn't find my backpack. I don't know. The bed, really? So it's so hard to live with kids. But it would be way easier to just make the bed, you to make the bed. But that's not going to help him. Right?
For things like that, is a list like a crutch? Is that something?
With my
he probably needs some reminding.
So that's okay, like posting
Oh,
on the
whatever
board that you
works.
read? Okay.
I have lists every day. And I can forget some very important things if I don't have a list. So, I mean, I understand the idea. Depending on the age of the